Thank you, Madam Speaker, for recognizing me as I join this debate here tonight. Madam Speaker, I would have listened to my colleague for point 14. Madam Speaker, and it seems, Madam Speaker, like the entire fiscal package was spent in point 14, Madam Speaker. I would have liked to stand here, Madam Speaker, and say the same for Moruga, Tableland, Madam Speaker, but it shows, Madam Speaker, it shows the biasness of this government, Madam Speaker.
You know, and people might need a little release, but we still sit in. So I'll ask all members to contain themselves, and we will still abide by Standing Order 53, as late as it is. Member for Moruga, Tableland.
Thank you for your protection, Madam Speaker. I know they get excited when they hear Moruga, Tableland, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, but that excitement is noise exiting, Madam Speaker, this August chambers, Madam Speaker. Because soon, Madam Speaker, they won't be on that side anymore. Madam Speaker, but as I was saying, what was listed out by the member of point 14 just shows the ideals of this PNM administration, Madam Speaker. It shows, Madam Speaker, that it is not every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago can enjoy that equal place we sing about in our national anthem, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what we see is true biasness and geographical discrimination, a term coined, Madam Speaker, by all my colleagues on this side. Madam Speaker, I would have listened to the member for point 14. I'm not going to waste too much time on my goodly friend, but I must rebut a couple of his statements, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, beginning with regards to the responsibility for dengue, Madam Speaker, when he said it was the local government practitioners, Madam Speaker. And I was so disappointed in that member, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as he is a former councillor and mayor, and he would know that if you don't get releases, Madam Speaker, from the ministry or the minister of local government, Madam Speaker, then how are local practitioners, Madam Speaker, able to, Madam Speaker, perform their duties, Madam Speaker? So I was disappointed in my colleague, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I said, I'm not going to waste too much time on my friend, Madam Speaker. I consider him such. Madam Speaker, as I join this debate, as the proud member of Parliament from Moruga, Tableland, Madam Speaker, I am honored to stand here, Madam Speaker, and contribute to this debate, Madam Speaker, as I lend my voice, Madam Speaker, to represent my constituents, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, but unfortunately, after 9 years, Madam Speaker, this government, Madam Speaker, has given budget presentation in this House that has been a disappointment after disappointment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, let me begin by extending my heartfelt gratitude to the member for Siparia, Madam Speaker, who once again has shown remarkable clarity and decisiveness in her clinical rebuttal of this shallow and unimaginative budget statement. Her analysis exposed the hollow nature of the policies put forward by those, Madam Speaker, on the opposite side. Madam Speaker, and they wouldn't want to listen to this, Madam Speaker, but it's the truth. In fact, Madam Speaker, the member for Superior's contribution, Madam Speaker, left little for me to add, Madam Speaker, because she gave a detailed analysis, Madam Speaker, and she gave hope to Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, because she showed them, Madam Speaker, a future without the People National Movement. She showed them that, Madam Speaker, she has plans, Madam Speaker, to retake our economy, Madam Speaker, and to boost, Madam Speaker, every sector in Trinidad and Tobago, in our local economy. However, I stand here, Madam Speaker, tonight, Madam Speaker, deeply frustrated as I witness yet another missed opportunity, Madam Speaker, by this administration. But before I get into the Minister of Finance statement, let me quickly address some issues of another previous speaker. Madam Speaker, I sometimes tired sitting in this chamber and listening to the members for Tobago, East and West, Madam Speaker. They speak in this chamber, Madam Speaker, they alone love Tobago. Madam Speaker, but that is not true. I love Tobago. We all love Tobago, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, one thing I will say, Madam Speaker, before I get into my substantive contribution here, one thing I will say, we on this side will take no lectures from that government, Madam Speaker, who, among other things known in this chamber and outside of this chamber, Madam Speaker, crashed the sea bridge for months on end and suffered Tobagonians. So how could they preach to us, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, I'm hearing noise, so. Madam Speaker, I now move on to the statement of the Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, and something in the cross-talk, Madam Speaker, with regards to when the member of Point said he's the only one with regards to landing a plane, and the Minister of Finance chimed in, Madam Speaker, I seek your protection because I know everyone on that side would have a chance.
And again, I say I know it's late. Some people may be a bit hungry. I think dinner is there. Some people may need to go and drink a little water. Some people may take a little exercise. And certainly, if you do it quietly, you leave the chamber with decorum, nobody's going to be disturbed, and you come back in with decorum. But if you're in here, we're going to abide by the standing orders, and we will give the member from Moruga Tableland her opportunity to make her contribution. We'll give her our heirs, just like each of us would want when our turn comes. Member from Moruga Tableland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as I was saying, I heard our esteemed finance minister chimed in and said he landed a plane too, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and it brought me back to when you're on board a plane and you're experiencing turbulence, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and that is exactly what we in Trinidad and Tobago is experiencing with this Minister of Finance handling of the economy, Madam Speaker. And we both know when turbulence sets in, Madam Speaker, the panic attack. Madam Speaker, that is every sector in Trinidad and Tobago, myself included, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the budget presented before us for the 10th consecutive year reflects a chronic lack of vision, a total absence of innovation, and an entrenched failure to recognize the immense potential that exists within our tourism, arts, and cultural sectors. Madam Speaker, for nearly a decade, we have been subjected to the same tired formula: empty promises, underwhelming policies, and half-hearted initiatives. Madam Speaker, regurgitation. If you would take the budget statement for 2024 and compare it to 2025, specifically when you're dealing with the tourism, culture, and the arts sector, Madam Speaker, it's a cut and paste. Madam Speaker, Budget 2025 is no different. It is once again, as I said, a missed opportunity. And the reason I have labeled my contribution a missed opportunity, Madam Speaker, it is because this Minister of Finance speaks of diversification, but yet again, he missed the opportunity to improve the lives of the people of Trinidad and Tobago through the tourism and cultural sector. I speak on behalf of my constituents in Moruga, Tableland. Madam Speaker, I say all of Trinidad and Tobago when I say that we are relieved that this will be the very last budget inflicted upon the people by that administration. It's similar to when our Honorable Prime Minister would have been, I don't want to use the terminology, the tongue crier for your budget statement. That was just the beginning, Madam Speaker. But as another colleague would have said, and I believe that was the member for Tobago West, that she's in town, well, the member is in town a long time. Madam Speaker, one thing I learned is the new kid on the block usually dictate the pace. And the fact that Moruga Tableland was added to this side, 2 more seats, Madam Speaker. And I also heard the member of Tobago West, basically in her contribution.
Swan song, swan song.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, another missed opportunity, but I know Tobago West and Tobago East and St. Joseph, Madam Speaker, San Fernando West. Madam Speaker, we have some seats on that side. Shaky. As I get in, Madam Speaker, the distraction, Madam Speaker, the distraction. The distraction.
So I understand the banter and the camaraderie, and I think it's going both ways, but while member for Moruga Tableland, the speech is addressing me. I think if you're throwing banter there, you're going to get reciprocate. So let's keep it this way, and hopefully all of the banter will die down. Proceed.
Hopefully, Madam Speaker, but one thing, as I consider myself a well-behaved member of this House, and I would say, I would say true.
What's the standing order? Sit down.
So is it that member for Port of Spain South, do you want to rise on standing order 53?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I do. I do, but I have to.
Can you cite the standing order?
Madam Speaker, I rise on standing order 48.1 as to the relevance of that comment, particularly, Madam Speaker, in light of the burning of tires.
Okay, so let's get back now to serious business, all right? Member for Moruga Tableland.
And I raise it in the context that I do not usually interfere with other members' contribution. Yes. So I expect the same respect. Madam Speaker, for those of us who work within the creative and cultural industries, the word legacy carries profound significance. Trinidad and Tobago is home to a cultural wealth that few countries possess.
True.
Our music, our art, our festivals, our rich history are the foundation of our national identity. Cultural pioneers such as Lord Kitchener, Pat Bishop, Leroy Calise, known affectionately as the Black Stallion, Madam Speaker, and the legendary Roy Cape, who sadly left us last month, are just some of our cultural heroes who spoke about preserving our legacy for future generations. This is why I am passionate about the cultural sector, Madam Speaker. This sector deals with our very essence of who we are as a people. This concept of legacy also applies to how governments are judged. Sadly, Madam Speaker, after 9 years of neglect, this government's legacy will forever be remembered as one of missed opportunity after missed opportunity. Madam Speaker, in preparation for this debate, I decided to research a document which was sent to me a long time ago, Madam Speaker, but I paid it no mind, which I am sure that no member opposite has ever read since they took office. Madam Speaker, that document is none other than the PNM manifesto for 2020. Madam Speaker, I am sure you would agree with me that no one in the government has ever read this document after...
Not to bring me into the debate.
Excuse?
Not to bring me into the debate.
Yes.
All right?
Yes,
So.
yes. After I would have listed some of the items that is detailed in that document, many of you seated here would agree with me that those on the opposite side have not read that document since they took office in 2020. And, Madam Speaker, in 2020, the PNM promised to grow the local fashion industry through partnership and involvement in trade shows. These are the promises that they gave to the tourism, culture, and the arts sector, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in 2020, the PNM promised to grow the local film industry by strengthening the rebate program. Madam Speaker, the only local production state-owned media is specializing in showcasing PNM political rallies, Madam Speaker, instead of showcasing local culture. Madam Speaker, in 2020, the PNM promised to establish cultural ambassadors. A program, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, for outstanding local artists, and it's supposed to be similar to our sports program. Madam Speaker, but sadly, the only ambassadors that this government have made are ambassadors for crime, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in 2020,
Find out to withdraw that and find a way to say that otherwise, please. I find that offending standing order in terms of insulting. Please.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw. Madam Speaker, in 2020, the PNM promised to focus on making Tobago a green destination and focus on marine and coastal tourism.
They give them oil spill.
That did not happen. Madam Speaker, this is the same government that wanted to build a mega hotel in no man's land. And when they were told they would be destroying the precious marine life, Madam Speaker, they said, no hairy crab is going to stop them. Well, it's been 5 years later, and thankfully, the hairy crab, Madam Speaker, has won that battle. So, Madam Speaker, I strongly urge my colleagues on the opposite bench to reread their manifesto, if only to remind themselves of what they promised to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is just the tourism and cultural section of that document. And explain what exactly they have been doing for the past 5 years. Madam Speaker, and I could list many more broken promises stated within that document. But my time here to contribute to this debate, Madam Speaker, is limited. Madam Speaker, we must be honest with the people of this nation. Over the past 9 years, tourism in Trinidad and Tobago has become a shadow of its true potential. Year after year, we hear the same tired lines, promises of development and diversification, economic transformation, yet what do we see? Absolutely, precisely nothing, Madam Speaker. The tourism industry has been left to stagnate as this government continues to neglect a sector that could be the lifeline for so many in this country, Madam Speaker. Unlike the government, those of us on this side of the House believe in telling the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago the truth. Unlike the government, I will not mama-guide the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, after almost a decade of continuous PNM rule, our tourism sector accounts for little more than 2% of our GDP. Madam Speaker, what have this government been doing? That's according to the Ministry of Tourism and Culture of the Arts' own national policy document, Madam Speaker, which was published on June 2021. Madam Speaker, this document is available online. In that document, the ministry also admits, despite being one of the larger countries in the English-speaking Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago captures less than 2% of an estimated 27 million international tourists who visit the region. Let me repeat that shocking statistics, Madam Speaker. So of 27 million international tourists who visit the Caribbean, Madam Speaker, less than 2% decide to visit Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is one of the largest, most developed nations in the English-speaking Caribbean. And we are struggling to get visitors to our shore. One will ask themselves, why is this? Why are tourists not coming to Trinidad and Tobago? Is it because other islands were not affected by COVID-19? Madam Speaker, we have to ask these questions. Is it because our Caribbean neighbors are so much more attractive than us? Madam Speaker, I defy anyone in this chamber, Madam Speaker, to argue with me when I say that Trinidad and Tobago has the best carnival in the world. We put on the world's greatest show. Madam Speaker, we have the best food. And there is no other island that could touch our sister isle, Tobago, when it comes to beaches. We have the best music. We have the steel pan, Madam Speaker, something members of that side just remembered recently. We have a cultural mix of people and religious festivities none of our neighbors can match.
Correct.
So no, Madam Speaker, our tourism sector is not suffering because Trinidad and Tobago does not have anything special to offer. Madam Speaker, do you know why our tourism sector is suffering and why tourists are not coming to our shores, Madam Speaker? It's because we possess what the rest of islands don't, Madam Speaker, a PNM government, a visionless government, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I have to put what I just said into context as to why tourists are not coming to our shores. Madam Speaker, let me offer the government some information which may explain why we are struggling to get visitors to our shores. This is a bulletin found on the website of the U.S. State Department. It was published on July 2nd, 2024. It reads, reconsider travel to Trinidad and Tobago due to crime. U.S. government personnel are prohibited from traveling to the following areas. Madam Speaker, in Port of Spain, Lavantil, Beetham, Sea Lots, Cocorite, Madam Speaker, and for some reason all of this sounds like PNM Stronghold. Interior of Queen's Park, Savannah. After dark, U.S. government personnel are prohibited from traveling to downtown Port of Spain. Fort George Overlook, all beaches, violence and shooting occur regularly. In some areas of Port of Spain, violent crimes such as murder, robbery, assault, sexual assault, home invasion, and kidnapping is common. Gang activity such as narcotics trafficking is common, Madam Speaker. A significant portion of violent crime is gang-related. Madam Speaker, that was one travel advisory, and we move to another. Here is what is written on the Government of Canada's website. Madam Speaker, and this was updated on September 24th, 2024. It reads, visitors must exercise a degree of caution in Trinidad and Tobago due to violent crime, gang-related attacks, gun violence, and drug-related crimes occur in Trinidad and Tobago. Weapons have been used on victims who refuse to cooperate. There is a risk of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and becoming a victim of gun-related crossfire throughout the country. Even during the day, Madam Speaker, as we say in local parlance, broad daylight, emergency services response may vary, something we as citizens know all too well.
Except the minister.
Madam Speaker, except, well, the Minister of Health, rapid response. And lastly, Madam Speaker, let me read another bulletin from the UK Foreign Office, which you can also find on their website, Madam Speaker. It says in Trinidad, there's a high level of violent crime. Gang-related attacks and shootings are increasing around the city center of Port of Spain, including Laventille, Mova, and Barataria. There is a risk of armed robbery. Madam Speaker, and this is so true, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, because it is sad that a member of this chamber had to experience that. So anyone could experience that, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, let me ask, what tourists from the US, the UK, or Canada going to feel compelled to visit Trinidad and Tobago? Madam Speaker, and the reason why, when we say tolerance, Madam Speaker, and we are dealing with, so sad, a 15-year-old because of the lack of tolerance, because not everyone went to Naparima or a convent, or we don't have a fake accent, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am a proud citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. So I speak my dialect, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, so I would restate that just for the Minister of Health, who I thought would have taken those advisory a little more serious, given what he would have experienced, Madam Speaker. But I guess because he could call for rapid response, but the ordinary citizen do not have that privilege. So let me ask, what tourists from the US, the UK, Canada is going to feel compelled to come to Trinidad and Tobago when it is advised that they can be a victim of a violent crime, Madam Speaker, in the heart of our capital city? Madam Speaker, in his statement, the minister talks about refining our tourism product, offering a unique and enriching experience. Madam Speaker, being robbed at gunpoint, again, our Minister of Health experience, but he didn't, Madam Speaker, is the only experience this government is enriching our nation in. And that is sad, Madam Speaker, but true. The minister in his statement made mention of increasing airlift and plans to refurbish the Mandalena Resort, the Hilton Conference Center, improving the branding of the Marriott Hotel in Tobago, as well as completing the Maracas Bay Hotel project, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't have an issue with any of these things in principle, except that proper procurement legislation procedures are carried out, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is important that Tobagonians feel reassured that the Mandalena is not being refurbished at taxpayers' expense for it to be simply sold to P&M friends and finances. Madam Speaker, I hope that the THA will have an input in what happens to the Mandalena Resort, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, right now, when visitors don't decide to come to Trinidad and Tobago, it is not because they don't like the Hilton Conference Center. It is because they don't want to end up at our morgue or return home to their families in a body bag, Madam Speaker. That is the reason why we can't get visitors to our show. Madam Speaker, this government's incompetent handling of our national security has not just led to the record high murder rate, Madam Speaker. It has led to the murder of every different sectors across our economy, especially the tourism industry, and that's a fact, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance also spoke about the government's target of increasing visitors' arrival to 500,000 by 2026. Madam Speaker, here is another fact that I would like to remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago of. Data on Trinidad and Tobago tourist arrivals from the World Tourist Organization show that the highest figures for tourist arrivals over the past 15 years was in 2015, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, who led the government in 2015? None other than the member for Superior. So this government is hoping to do by 2026 what a UNC government already did back in 2015. Make it make sense, Madam Speaker. All the Minister of Finance basically said in that budget statement is that they are ready to pass the baton to persons, to people that are ready to hold office, Madam Speaker, and save our tourism industry. Despite this government being in power for 10 years, they have never either before COVID-19 pandemic been able to attract the number of tourists to our island, Madam Speaker, that a UNC government did. I want to provide the House with some context about how this government is failing the tourism sector. Across the Caribbean, our neighbors, Madam Speaker, and they don't like us to compare, Madam Speaker, to other regions, other neighbors, Madam Speaker, but we have to look at Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Barbados, St. Lucia. Madam Speaker, for they have recognized the importance of the tourism, of their tourism industry, and they have made it the cornerstone of their economies. We are yet to do so, Madam Speaker. We use the word in the budget statement, but we have not taken the steps to achieve that. They have embraced it, investing in genuine long-term infrastructural projects, marketing, and cultural preservation. That is why across the Caribbean, tourism accounts for over 50% of countries' GDP. That's 98% of the 27 million visitors to the Caribbean that choose our neighbors over us. Madam Speaker, the tourism industry is not just about having a nice hotel or a nice beach. The tourism industry is about creating sustainable jobs for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So don't come here to mamagai the people of Trinidad and Tobago and say you are making tourism the cornerstone of our economy when you cannot be bothered to move the industry beyond 2% of our GDP, Madam Speaker. Where is the clear policy framework, Madam Speaker? Where is the vision for the future of tourism? Where is the plan that says, okay, we are here at 2% of our GDP, and then we will do what is necessary to get us to 3, then 4, 5%. There's no plan, Madam Speaker. That is how developing a real and proper industry works. That is how the sector can expand and job opportunities can grow for our young people, Madam Speaker. Well, Madam Speaker, the truth is there is no plan. Once again, this government has failed to articulate any cohesive strategy to develop the tourism and cultural sectors. The result is a sector that is starved of investment, plagued by underdevelopment, and continuously overlooked when it comes to funding allocations. Let me highlight just one example that is close to my heart, Madam Speaker: ecotourism. Around the world, ecotourism has become a significant draw for travelers, especially those seeking to experience natural beauty and sustainable travel experiences. Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago has a jewel of ecotourism in the Caroni Bird Sanctuary. Visitors flock there to witness the beauty of the scarlet ibis and the mangroves. Earlier this year, Madam Speaker, the government opened a boardwalk at the bird sanctuary. Here is what columnist Paulo Kernahan had to say during his recent visit to the boardwalk. A boring walk, Madam Speaker, he calls it. If you're in the market for a completely underwhelming tourist experience, then the Caroni Bird Sanctuary Boardwalk might just tickle your fancy. This project appears conceptually flawed. In so many ways, it's hard to imagine that people who had any proximity to or knowledge of the swamp and its wild inhabitants had anything to do with it. Madam Speaker, again, it hints of no consultation. Mr. Kernahan adds the possibility of witnessing the roosting of the scarlet ibis from the boardwalk is, I am going to say, quite slim. The boardwalk is emblematic of the Trini way. Sink money in a bog, claim credit of innovative thinking, and repeat the process across the length and breadth of the apparatus of state cluelessness. Madam Speaker, only the PNM government could go to a literal swamp and make it worse.
Sad but true.
Madam Speaker, countries like Costa Rica and Belize have harnessed their natural resources to attract visitors. Why can't we do that here in Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker? Why can't we do that? Madam Speaker, in my constituency of Moruga, Tableland, we have some of the most breathtaking beaches, the Cocoa Museum, the historic Spring Bridge, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I would have listened again to the member for Tobago West, Tobago East complain with regards to the THA ignoring them, Madam Speaker. And I can say the same with regards to the various ministries and the ministers them seated before me. I would have written, Madam Speaker, for the refurbishment of the Spring Bridge. To date, not one response, Madam Speaker. But they come here, Madam Speaker, to cry them a river. But where is the government's plan to develop ecotourism? Ecotourism could be a major job creator for Moruga, Tableland, Madam Speaker. Hence, I advocate for it. I have young persons that need employment.
They want them on dependency.
Madam Speaker, where are the programs to promote these beautiful eco-friendly destinations? Where are the incentives for local entrepreneurs who want to develop ecotourism businesses? Where are the investments in eco-friendly accommodation, trails, and tours, Madam Speaker? None, Madam Speaker. There is none. Madam Speaker, sport tourism, Madam Speaker, is also a sector that is ripe for us here, Madam Speaker, in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago, if we do what is right. In his statement, the minister boasted about the recent major sporting event, Madam Speaker, and I know my colleague would have raised this, that was held in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I presume, Madam Speaker, the minister was talking about the World Cup, Madam Speaker, and the matches held at the Taruba Stadium. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance is evidently unaware that after the tournament, again, ICC, Madam Speaker, as my colleague said, put out a statement stating that the pitch is unsatisfactory. Madam Speaker, how could the pitch be unsatisfactory after so much money have been spent at that facility? Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, it would appear the Minister of Finance knows as much about cricket as he does about economics.
Zero.
Madam Speaker, I turn now to our carnival, the jewel of our cultural calendar. Carnival is undoubtedly one of the most significant contributors to our local economy, drawing visitors from all over the world, and has the potential to do better. But despite its importance, this government has failed to properly measure and manage its economic impact. Madam Speaker, how can we improve an event if we cannot measure its success?
Correct.
Madam Speaker, only this year a concerned citizen, a taxpayer, who wanted to verify the finances of the National Carnival Commission and to find out how our tax-paying dollars are spent or were spent, Madam Speaker, had to file a Freedom of Information request to acquire this information. Madam Speaker, I had to do the same, and I have gotten no answer to date. Madam Speaker, and this is necessary because the chairman of NCC is on record in our daily news, Madam Speaker, because he has made claims of generating over $1 billion in revenue in Carnival 2024, that is this year, and all that is well and good. Madam Speaker, the NCC chairman achieved this with an allocation of $147 million. Madam Speaker, that is extravagant news because that is a whopping $850 million profit.
Yes.
So if he can do that, Madam Speaker, with $147 million, why don't the member for Diego Martin Northeast not transfer his title of Minister of Finance to the chairman of NCC, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, and I made that statement with no malice. We are in need in this country, Madam Speaker. The Prime Minister said that we have to tighten our belts. Difficult days ahead. And if we have someone that belongs to that side that could do what he did with $147 million, he deserves a chance.
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance might want to contact him urgently because in his budget statement, he said that Carnival generated $93 million US, and that is 632 million TT, give or take, Madam Speaker. So as the member for Superior always say, the maths is not mathsing. Madam Speaker, taxpayers have a right to know how their monies are spent, and no industry can seriously claim to be profitable if it's unwilling to show its receipts, Madam Speaker, if it's unwilling to show its financial statements. Let me repeat, there is no reliable data on the economic impact of Carnival. How much money does it generate? How many jobs are created? What are the key areas of expenditure? And how can we maximize our return on investments? Madam Speaker, if we don't get the answers in the minister's winding up, I hope in the Standing Finance Committee we can see clearly. Without this data, we are operating in the dark. If we cannot quantify Carnival's impact, we cannot effectively plan for its future. Other countries, Madam Speaker, have already embraced data-driven approaches to managing their cultural events. Take Brazil's Carnival, for example. Every year, detailed studies are conducted to assess the economic impact of Rio Carnival, looking at visitors' numbers, spending patterns, and broader economic benefits. Armed with that data, Madam Speaker, they can make informed decisions about investment, marketing, and infrastructure. Trinidad and Tobago need to follow suit. We need to invest in proper research and data collection so that we can strategically grow Carnival and ensure its continued success for generations to come. And I will tell you why this is needed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if we do not make steps now to improve our Carnival product, Madam Speaker, there may come a day when the Carnival that we put on may no longer be the greatest show in the world, Madam Speaker. But our neighbors, Madam Speaker...
Member, you have 2 minutes left of original speaking time. You're entitled to 10 more minutes, 10 additional minutes to wind up, if you so wish.
Madam Speaker, and
So
it
I take it you're taking additional 10
Yes,
minutes?
Madam Speaker.
Okay, please.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, and I will quickly close on this point, but it is needed, Madam Speaker, because our neighbors are looking on. And Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, Madam Speaker, their Carnival may soon be able to reckon with ours. Madam Speaker, the failure to promote Carnival, I had a lot. Madam Speaker, but as the proud member of Moruga Tableland, I need to spend some time on the issues within my constituency, but I must, Madam Speaker, deal with some issues raised by the stakeholders, if it's just to make mention with regards to the insufficient allocation, Madam Speaker, because tourism was allocated last year just a little under 0.53% of the total budget package, and that figure has not increased significantly in this budget statement, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, one of the biggest issues the stakeholders had, Madam Speaker, is with regards to the merging of the ministries that would have taken place in 2020, Madam Speaker. And that merging, Madam Speaker, what the stakeholders is saying, the stakeholders believe that the ministry's focus has shifted more towards culture and the arts, leaving tourism on the back burner, Madam Speaker. And I have to agree with the stakeholders. Madam Speaker, I also would have liked to mention with regards to the lost opportunities within the creative industries, Madam Speaker, because once we put focus there, Madam Speaker, it would open up avenues with regards to creating employment for the young persons, Madam Speaker, the graduates that is leaving our universities and schools on a yearly basis. And earn foreign exchange, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I close, I want to address a very serious matter. As I said, Madam Speaker, as I stated, I'm a proud daughter of Moruga Tableland, Madam Speaker, and I'm honored, Madam Speaker. I am honored with regards to being the member of Moruga Tableland, representing the constituents of Moruga Tableland in this House, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is an opportunity I hold dear to my heart, and I'm humbled by the faith the constituents of Moruga Tableland put in me, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, no matter what tricks is tried on the other side, Madam Speaker, the people of Moruga Tableland stand steadfast with me, Madam Speaker. They are resolute that I could chart the way forward for them, Madam Speaker. Today, I'm asking this government to discontinue insulting the people of Moruga Tableland. Every year, over the past 9 years, this government has promised the moon and the stars to the people of Moruga Tableland. And every year, Madam Speaker, they would fail tremendously, Madam Speaker, disappointing the people. Madam Speaker, the betrayal, Madam Speaker, that the PNM government would have executed on the constituents of Moruga Tableland, the burgesses in Lengua Indian Walk, Madam Speaker, after coming with their hamper brigade, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you would have seen ministers that would have lost, if not for a ways map, Madam Speaker, with regards to some of the roadways they would have traversed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I sat and listened to that budget contribution, Madam Speaker, and I'm sad that I have to report back to the burgesses of Lengua Indian Walk that this government yet again, Madam Speaker, disappointed them. But rest assured that the member for Siparia and her faith, Madam Speaker, and the plans laid out would chart the way forward for the constituency of Moruga Tableland. Madam Speaker, I sat and I listened to that budget statement, and again the Minister of Finance came to promise a highway, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a highway again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I am tempted to use the words of Princess Margaret, Madam Speaker, when she said, Madam Speaker, and Princess Margaret is a local celebrity, when she said, let them put that highway between the leg, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my time.
I just want you to be very careful with where you're going with that.
Yes,
okay?
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will move on to the infamous Moruga agro-processing plant, Madam Speaker. Up till today, nobody knows if it's open or closed. Madam Speaker, I invite all media houses.
Let's have some order now.
Madam Speaker, I would not let them waste my remaining 10 minutes. I invite all media houses to do an investigation into this facility and not just rely on the members on the opposite side, Madam Speaker, coming to this house and making statements with regards to that facility. Madam Speaker, Moruga, Madam.
Sides now, all right? And for all who don't realize I'm on my legs, it's both sides. I would like to hear the remainder of the contribution from the member from Moruga Tableland. And again, all those who can't maintain their calm, maintain their silence, they can take a walk and come back. I'm sure we'll have enough time for them to come back and hear the rest of the sitting.
Right. Madam Speaker, with regards to the agro-processing facility, Madam Speaker, approximately over $90 million was spent. In the last year budget statement, we were promised 128 employment opportunities. We were told that 5 shells were occupied and 2 lots, Madam Speaker. Sadly, I would report to this House, Madam Speaker, that only 2 shells Madam Speaker, are occupied, Madam Speaker, with approximately 2 to 15 persons employed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I say that without fear of contradiction, Madam Speaker, because I live in Moruga Tableland, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, so we, Madam Speaker, the constituents of Moruga Tableland, Madam Speaker, is asking for the government to make good on their promise. But if they don't, Madam Speaker, rest assured that myself and the member for Superior will operationalize that facility. Madam Speaker, I am asking with regards to the $62 million that was spent on the Moruga fishing facility, Madam Speaker. I ask on behalf of the fisher folk, Madam Speaker, in this August chamber, the Minister of Works sat and said that it would have been open on December 2023 or January 2024. Madam Speaker, we are in October 2024 and that facility is still closed after it claimed to be completed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I hope they are not waiting on an election day to cut ribbon, Madam Speaker, because I will be armed with every fisher folk outside that facility, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I speak on behalf of the residents of Gomez Trace, Phase 1, Phase 2, Madam Speaker, the housing development, Madam Speaker. I ask the Minister of Housing to please hear the cry of the residents with regards to the sewer, the landslips, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the units are caving, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, persons are losing their investment. Madam Speaker, with regards to the roads in Moruga Tableland, I would have stand in the budget of 2023, Madam Speaker, and listed every roadway in my constituency, Madam Speaker, from Rocha Douglas, Madam Speaker, to Glod Road to Tableland, in Naparima, Miara Road, 6th Company, 3rd Company, Hindustan Frederick, 5th Company, Samuel Cooper, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I know they know Samuel Cooper, every house would have received hampers, Puran Road, Pinal, Rock Road, Barracoa, Platinate, Komoto, Mantaco, Second Branch, Diamond, St. Cross, and my constituents forgive me for my time is limited, but every roadway and network in Moruga Tableland, Madam Speaker, I raise it here because it is in need of repair. Do not show political biasness when you come into my constituency. When you come into Moruga Tableland, you fix, Madam Speaker, from Pitikafe to Marak to Sukan Trace to Rocha Douglas, the Naparima Miara Road, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the pineapple farmers of Tableland, Madam Speaker, we do not want to hear promises from the Prime Minister with regards to he knows that canned pineapple can be produced. If you're going to do it, or the member of Superior will. Madam Speaker, water, Madam Speaker. I was so disappointed, Madam Speaker, in the Minister of Public Utilities that he wasted his contribution here today when we as citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, myself included, go months without water, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, they will come here, Madam Speaker, and list out projects, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, but I tell you, we still suffer for water. Madam Speaker, with regards to this education system, I beg the Minister of Education to look into Moruga Composite that went from a 7-year to a remedial school, Madam Speaker. Wow. Madam Speaker, I am begging on behalf of my constituents, Madam Speaker. The crime situation with regards to Enrico and his daughter Enika, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my heart burns for Ms. Hesper Ali, Madam Speaker, when she cries every living day, Madam Speaker, and would write posts on Facebook, Madam Speaker. I beg that the Minister of National Security hears that mother cry and find the perpetrator, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the hope of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, is that the PNM would not be in office, Madam Speaker, beyond August 2025. And on that glorious day, we would sing, with one voice, free at last, thank God